listening to The Boze Knows, a podcast about education where the wonderful students, teachers, and staff can share their stories. And I'm your host, Mr. Boze, and today I have a special guest remote in studio to help us talk more about Cambridge. So thank you for joining me. Please introduce yourselves to our listeners.
Yeah, my name is Jeff Brewer. I'm a school implementation manager for Cambridge International. I work with QI Roberts and most of the schools in Florida north of I-4 and many of the schools throughout the United States as well.
That's great. So thanks for taking the time to sit down with me. So can you kind of give our listeners a general overview of Cambridge? For those who may not be, they're familiar with it at our school, but may not be familiar with the bigger picture of what Cambridge is.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we talk about Cambridge, we got to start, it's actually through the University of Cambridge in the UK. So it's not just a fly-by-night program. So we do know that, but it's a international based curriculum, assessment, PD, and resource provider. I think that's a good way to wrap up what we do with an international context, as it is through the University of Cambridge in the UK, like I said. Many of our schools are international schools throughout the globe. And when we initially created the Global Perspectives curriculum, which is now kind of a keystone of all of our curriculum from pre-K all the way to 12th grade, it was kind of done so to start getting students to think in that international, context and start thinking about different perspectives as a result of that.
That's great. So so it came out of Cambridge. So was this something that Cambridge University wanted to try to get more students into their university and just grew from there?
I think when you look at the curriculum as a whole and the organization as a whole, the Cambridge IGSEs, or pre-ACE as we call it in the state of Florida, the Cambridge IGSEs have been a part of their curriculum for a long time, and certainly the Cambridge A-levels were as well, or the British A-levels. British A-levels, are used to get into universities, and the Cambridge IGSEs are used to kind of matriculate into different versions of school throughout the world. And those kind of are different standards of curriculum to move on. And it really became more of a concentrated effort to expand outside of their international market where they were already, kind of into the U.S. market.
That's great. So can you elaborate? Because I know what was super helpful for me when I was learning about Cambridge and why things kind of didn't line up or didn't make sense to me here in the States was kind of what the role Cambridge plays internationally, because it does function differently internationally than we've kind of adopted parts of it here in the States.
Yeah, absolutely. In the States, it's certainly more of a public school facing entity. More of our public schools are using it for accountability purposes, for getting students into college here. College admissions certainly in the States is different than it is internationally. Internationally, students, for example, have to complete 3 or 4 A-levels to even qualify for many college admissions at universities throughout the world. And like I said previously as well, the IGCSE exams, or what we call pre-ACE in the States, or certainly in Florida, are also a precursor to moving into upper level academia in high school levels, or that version of school for our international schools.
Okay. So it's kind of I'm trying to think of a way to put it, if the state tests we have, especially in Florida, if the outcome of that dictated what class you took next, kind of thing.
Sure. Yeah, you can kind of say that. Yeah. So that would kind of be akin to what the IGCSEs may be internationally, and then probably what the SATs or ACTs were for us in the States for a long time prior to College Board AP, IB, and us, starting to really have curriculum options and as well as dual enrollment now, CTE programs, the various options that are out there for students.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it started, the curriculum and stuff started internationally, and then so how did it make its way to the United States, and where did it first get its foothold?
So its first foothold actually came at Bay High School in 1997. One of my colleagues, Sherry Reach, she still works for the organization now, was the kind of the pioneer who brought Cambridge to the United States. She began working with the UK on a program at that point. There wasn't anything called the ACE diploma, so they created a curriculum pathway for the United States and ultimately for the rest of the international market as well. But it was at that point the ACE diploma was born. Internationally, ACE really isn't a thing. It's AS and A levels. So it's the IGCSEs, it's the O levels, it's all of those curriculum qualifications that they're called. But the ACE diploma was kind of born for Florida, and certainly the ACE curriculum theoretically born for Florida at the beginning.
Okay. So I didn't realize, I mean, I guess I could have guessed by the ubiquity of it kind of in Florida, but that it started here.
Yeah, absolutely. It was here, Virginia, pretty good foothold initially as well in Arizona, Mississippi, some small areas, and then kind of grew organically from there. But it was Sherry's initial foray at Bay High School is what started it.
That's awesome. So how is it expanded within the United States, and kind of how many states now recognize Cambridge as an official option for students?
We have a pretty significant foothold throughout the United States. I couldn't really tell you off the top of my head right now the number of states, but the real growth has come through accountability. Every state has an accountability metric. Many of those states have current college readiness as one of those metrics. Certainly here in the state of Florida, we have that. And what you'll see generally is that AP, IB, Cambridge are named in those accountability metrics. And generally, that's how a lot of that movement or growth has happened over time. Is you see the need from the school perspective. Hey, we have to do something to boost school grade to be meeting these metrics, and we're one of those options in many of our states, and certainly here in the state of Florida for sure.
Yeah. So you kind of mentioned the accountability piece. So how, kind of what patterns or trends are you seeing with outcomes for students who use the kind of Cambridge pathway? I don't want to compare one to the other, but just...
Sure, absolutely. Well, I think when you take a look at some of the studies that one of my colleagues have done, Kat, I think you guys have probably used that research there from Florida State a couple of times. We've done some work with Florida State, with Arizona State University, where we're seeing really incredible outcomes for our students in terms of four-year graduation rates, subsequent course success. So if a student takes biology, for example, with you, passes the bio exam at the AS level, they go get college credit at Florida State, their next bio course, very good likelihood that they're going to have an A or B and a truly good outcome of that course. So I think when you're looking at that, that's the type of research and metrics that we're seeing from our students, because they're coming out really well prepared with a really good foundation in critical thinking, writing, communication skills. When you look at the core of the curriculum, global perspectives, as I've already mentioned, at its foundation requires students to think analytically, to analyze documents, to evaluate. And really, that's setting students up for success, whatever they choose to do, whether it's college, it's a career, it really doesn't matter. All of those are skills that are needed across the board.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know, from personal experience, the Cambridge being internationally based, that curriculum has really helped students who might not have been able to access other curricula. It's really helped them because it's written essentially for students where English is a second language.
Yeah, absolutely. In most of our countries, I think if you look across all of the schools that we're in, I think we're in, I think only 5 are native English speakers.
Wow, that's incredible.
So thinking about that, it is huge. And that really comes back to the assessment piece and how our assessments are created. And they're created with the idea that, yes, we're testing in English, but we're not testing your English language knowledge other than English language course. But in mathematics, for example, we're testing your mathematical ability and to see if you can put concepts together. And as you know, as a mathematics teacher, it's all positively scored. So it's all meant to see or give you the ability to show what you know.
Yeah, as someone who teaches Cambridge and another assessed subject, it is interesting because I have students that have taken both, and to kind of get them to mode switch of okay, well, this was okay last year, but it's not going to be okay this year kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you work with principals and schools around the state of Florida. What are some of the challenges or misconceptions around ACE and around Cambridge that you tend to run into?
I think some old ones were college credit. I think we all remember that. I think you guys came on board in 2013. I'm sure that was a question that your community said back then as well. And I think one of the neat things is when I took this role in 2021, I think we were at 400, just over 400 college credit policies, and now we're over 900 college credit policies throughout the United States. So our growth there has been significant. So that's one misconception I think that's pretty easily navigated, or navigated, not navigated. But also I think, the other misconception from some students is it's too hard, but the reality is the questions in the assessments are meant to obviously challenge you, but at the same time be open enough for you to provide an answer that you can defend. And you don't always have to have the absolute right answer with that. So I think that's the other, probably the student misconception is, always work through the answer, defend your answer, and always remember that they are positively scored.
Yeah, I know some of my math students, that was one of their, I wouldn't say necessarily complaints, but they're like, I can defend my answer and justify it in history, but like I have to have the right answer in math. And I was like, well, you have to have an answer in the ballpark for math.
Right. If you show all the work and you're right up to a point, you're still getting those method points to that spot. Yeah, absolutely.
So you've talked about the expansion into the high schools, and you mentioned the different college credit policies. So how does Cambridge kind of collaborate with especially institutions in the United States to continue that growth of them accepting Cambridge credits and accepting them for, best way I can say it is a real class, but
Sure.
a class that counts towards students' majors?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a team in our higher ed kind of group within our U.S. team that is their mission, is to go from university to university, from state to state, to build college credit policies with obviously the goal that they are in major or core requirements more often than not. We also are looking always at changing what the curriculum looks like. We have a U.S. history syllabus coming out with the idea it's going to be tailored to the U.S. market.
I know we're really excited about that one.
Yeah, for the same purpose, right? Because it's going to better fit what colleges are looking for that purpose. So we're always trying to grow, trying to improve what we offer as well. And I think the biggest part of that is listening to, our teachers, our students, our principals. As you already mentioned, I get to work with several, and giving that feedback back, because reality is we have to have a product that everybody wants and wants to continue to use. And we want to be that competitive piece for everyone.
That's great. I know I've helped lots of students. They're like, oh, I don't know what this counts for. I was like, okay, let's look it up. And
Yep.
It's this at, 14 universities across the state,
Yeah. And that's the thing that I would always say is, go ahead and look. We have a recognitions database right on our website. It's a great starting point. It's continuing to grow, and we're able now with some of our consultants to put in actual credit charts for some of the universities that are willing to share them with us. But otherwise, there's links to those admissions policies or credit policies if they have a true credit by examination policy for each of the colleges and universities. And the beautiful thing in the state of Florida is the state of Florida has a K-20 seamless policy, so everything is articulated for both the junior colleges and the university system. So it makes it pretty easy for college credit purposes to matriculate from one to the next.
Yeah, absolutely. So we talked about the IGCSEs, or pre-ACE as we call it here in Florida. Are you seeing those expanding in the United States to kind of obviously perfect world would be replace some of those state tests so that schools could truly be K-12 Cambridge?
Yeah, I think that is always, a possibility. We are working with the state of Mississippi right now in Corinth High School to do something similar to that. So something certainly to keep an eye on as that continues to grow out. And we are seeing schools throughout the state of Florida and other states using the IGCSE curriculum and some of the assessments to be able to check for fidelity and make sure that their students are being as successfully prepared as we think they are as they move from 9th to 12th grade. We also have the same types of curriculum in the K to 12 space with our Cambridge primary and lower secondary curriculum that have checkpoint exams as well that do kind of the same thing. They give you that fidelity check at the end of that stage or stages of curriculum.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of along on that same vein, kind of what are the future goals and aspirations for Cambridge in the United States?
I think as always, it is to grow, but it's to grow to make sure that we're doing the best we can for our current schools and as we grow out our students. So very much like you already mentioned, making sure that we have those policies in place that best impact our students and our schools as we move forward. And I think ultimately just taking the message from the University of Cambridge itself is that they want to make sure that we're preparing students to be ready for the world. And that's kind of the real goal.
Yeah, I have noticed, so Putnam County, where I teach, went through a couple of years ago a big strategic plan, as most major districts do across Florida and across the United States. And they came up with, they called it the portrait of a graduate. So it's like the 5 things that, a student who graduates from Putnam County schools is going to be able to do. And it was interesting when they announced that and, thinking about the Cambridge learner attributes. And I was like, those are the same things,
same
just
things
different
apply,
words.
Right? Being innovative, engaged, all those things are still part of what we want all of our students to be, whether they're our words, they're the, same from IB with their portrait that they have. They're all key things, skills that we want our students to possess as they not only grow with us, but ultimately move on to the next stage of life.
Yeah, and for me as a teacher, that's one of the things I really, aside from really excellent PD from Cambridge, is the fact that it's teaching the students how to be successful using the subject as the vehicle.
Right.
It's using history, it's using math, it's using biology to teach them, yes, the subject, but mostly the skills that they need to be successful no matter what subject they take going forward. So
yeah, and as you mentioned with PD, the focus there not only being on the subject content, like you said, but on getting students engaged, making them the center of instruction, and then ultimately getting them to think metacognitively. Why am I doing this? Why am I earning this grade? How does this all work for me? And really start taking those next steps. And at the end of the day, that's what every college wants. That's what every employer wants.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I tell my juniors and sophomores all the time when they're thinking about college. And they're like, it's like the grade is not as important as what you're doing. Do you know how to do the things? If you can show the colleges that, you'll be fine.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So that was kind of the end of my pre-scripted questions. Is there anything else that the listeners should know about Cambridge that they might not know, or maybe something that you wanted to share that I didn't ask about?
Trying to think of something that might not know. I think, one tip I may give, since the listeners are possible students and parents of your school and maybe other Cambridge schools, is, use your ability to look at the past assessments, mock question papers, grade thresholds, scoring rubrics to your advantage, because you can get a lot of tips from those. Making sure, taking a look at the grade thresholds with your teachers will give you a good idea of what you need to do on your assessment as you prepare. And really take time to look at point values as you're stressing on a test. Use it to your advantage. What's the most important? Where am I going to get the biggest bang for my buck out of this test? If I'm stressing over a 1-point question or a 10-point question, where are you going to put that value of your time?
Yeah, I think that's something that in my other subjects that I teach that aren't Cambridge, I do miss that openness of the assessments. That Cambridge, you guys just put everything out there. Some of it may be for teachers only, but for the most part, it's all out there available to everybody that needs to have access to it, which is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, that is the goal, right? If you have open access, that it really does take the hide and seek the guessing game out of testing. And it really just comes down to being able to show what you know.
Yeah. Do you know the content? Not do you know how to take the test?
Yeah, you're not testing the test and testing the content at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that's all I have for you. Again, I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down with us. That wraps up another episode of The Bows Knows. Thank you to Jeff Brewer for taking the time to sit down with me and share his insight into Cambridge with all of you. And hopefully all of you have come away with a little more knowledge about what Cambridge and a Cambridge education actually means. If you want to find out more, you can check out the Cambridge International website, or you can check out the QI Roberts webpage, where we've curated some of that Cambridge information for you and provided you some direct links, especially to the credit by examination database that Jeff mentioned in the interview, where you can go look and see at the colleges you're looking at what credit they would give you for the different exams. So I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something. Listeners, if you like the podcast, subscribe on your favorite podcast player of choice so you don't miss out on future episodes, and please share with your friends. Until next time, excellence in all endeavors.